Okay. Okay, I think we're... Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Poetry at the Albany Library. Very happy to see all of you. My name is Catherine Taylor, and I host these evenings. Tonight, we're very excited to have Brenda Hillman back. She has just, in the last few months, completed her final in the tetralogy of books on the four elements. This most recent one being Seasonal Works with Letters on Fire, which won the Northern California Book Award just 2 weeks ago. We've been so very fortunate here to be hearing some of these poems along the way, from Cascadia and Practical Water. Yes, I would lose my place. Pieces of Air and the Epic. That all four of these books have been just marvelous, and along the way, Brenda has earned a William Carlos Williams Award, a Los Angeles Times Book Award for Poetry, and been on the finalist list for a National Book Award. We're just very, very happy for her and very happy to have her here tonight. Now, when I talked to Brenda several months ago about possibly doing this reading, she suggested reading with four younger, up-and-coming poets, which is so like Brenda to be wanting the company and the interaction and to be sharing the experience of these public readings and of sending out our ideas through our art and starting these discussions, which are just so very, very important, especially when we get into these issues of social justice and ecology, which all five of our readers tonight do share in common, and we will learn a little bit more about all of them. So what we're going to do is begin with Brenda Hillman, and we are going to end with Brenda Hillman. So she's kind of going to bookend the evening for us, which is very nice. And then our other readers, Angela Hume, Melissa Mack, Sara Larson, and Jessie Sandoval, we practiced this before, will be reading, and then we will hear again from Brenda, who will talk also a little bit about how this particular group came together. And I'd love to have a few questions and a little bit of discussion, because I think eco-poetics and the feminist aspect of that and social justice and the arts, these are all just very important things for us to be thinking about. So I'm just so very happy to present Brenda Hillman.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's such a labor of love, and we're just very grateful to be here. You do just such a marvelous job. In this community, I was telling my young friends that it's just such a beautiful community of poets who gather here every month, and you are a treasure to each other and to the community. So I'm looking forward to the open mic, actually. And I will say a word right now about the idea of this for me was to invite some of the women that I encountered in Occupy actions, and we were involved together in various aspects of thinking about social justice and ecological activism in the last few years. And so as I thought about it and suggested several people to Catherine, she invited some of them, and they're here tonight, and I'm just thrilled, and she'll be introducing everyone a little bit individually. So thrilled to hear their work. So I actually wanted to start with a poem by Hilary Gravendike, who has just passed away, and she's a beautiful, amazing poet, and she published a book with Omni Dawn called Harm. Deliverance. As to the sleeping tree hollowed out in the woods, it fell deeply into a notched boat. Waveless forest floor, shadowed heart, stand of ironwood. In the meantime, in some time, a bunker in readiness for a flood, boat uplifted, unmet sea, needful body uncarried. As to the dreaming craft, lightened by journeys, it was a swiftly parted school of lime-bright fish. I was nameless, delivered, solitude my only invention. Hillary. So this book, Seasonal Works with Letters on Fire, as Catherine mentioned, is the fourth in a tetralogy on the elements. And it was occasioned by the idea that fire, inner, outer, around us, and as a metaphor and as an actuality is for me, the Heraclitean finish of that investigation. So this takes each season as the idea is that each poem is a different season, really. In summer, everything is something's twin. Tell your mother's first syllable, the moth, to bring its trigon to the doorframe. The universe is speeding up, electrons swallowed by the rose. You work so hard, too hard, too hard. Humans have made a disaster, but what, sister? But nothing, pencil, tap, tap. Such a short season between dogwood and tiger lily. Sunscreen sinks between hairs on your arm. Western yew, Taxus brevifolia, requests a canopy. People come here for their bit of joy. They gather in western towns, radicals growing weed in the woods, makers of quilts and clouds, loggers, keepers of the sick with their hounds. They rest on weekends in bars for love without reason or ledger. Castor and Pollux sink in the cougar's cry. In a month or so, the sky will swallow Gemini. Hurry now, for the hive is ill. The cedar branch bows low as the wagon passes, and earth lies down in the long earth bed. Plenty of accidents come your way, but today you are otherwise. Today you train yourself to be safe, to work, as Billy has trained the little horse. To stem the time we spent. This is written just after Leslie Scalapino died. There being time at present blue, Leslie Scalapino. The ancestors don't crowd us, they become a kind wind to let us pass through. Stems of avena, stripe, stripe, behind their mother, stripe, stripe, stripe. Baby skunks have entered the spicy ground, like a ribbon falling from a girl who's learning to read. Harbor seals are molting now, a few. A woman stays visible in stems of her words, stems from the Triassic, ooze from disaster, and now nothing can stem the crisis. From stemma to stammer, stand and stammer, oyster, embrace your inner Halliburton. From a hill in a dream of time, I brought some extra kindling to the fire. Like an eye in every font, we intend to make some changes. We hope to learn to breathe before we die. The grain spirits have abandoned the painting and spread wild flax to the field. Eel, please don't rise before I rise. Acetylcholine brings its arrows to the spine and causes my arms to move. And so I'll read one Occupy poem now and one in the second little shift. This is dedicated to Melissa, who is going to hear from. I was thinking when we were gathering at Oscar Grant Plaza, as we called it, there's a sort of ring of office buildings around. I was thinking of Melissa up in her office. So this is dedicated to her. A quiet afternoon at the office. When you're overwhelmed at your job and the room is a field of consciousness, forming first the violet edges and later the pierced spiral of what just happened, You try to remember events while you stumble over twigs of the day like a red bee. So much anger in the economy after too much not enough. People setting tents in the streets. The last of the fruit gives way on branches you see as you work, holding one annihilated breath. Now that the crisis has no locale, there's a sense of the lively unit into which they had placed feeling. Fatigue and theory, cornice and cup, links of the spine on the chair. What will they do, will they do, will they do, when labor rebels, but not quickly? It was so much work to cohere. A radical hope fills in, revolt in the square, thin crows, fat capital, the ash, the lists, the fire you've been harvesting for this. And so I'll end this little piece with a newish poem. It's actually 18 months old, but for me that's new. It's Brief Walk at Salt Point Park. It's about a hike that Bob and I took up in a pygmy forest up north of here, Salt Point. Seal pups, arr, arr, arr. The skin of the soul felt a chill, especially the left side of the S facing the Pacific. Specific, Pacific, specific, Pacific, arr, arr, arr. Sound stock, burdock, human, pines. Does the S move toward pines or spines? Buckwheat, hardpan, up a hill, finding the rim of the miracle. Fear blue, shade, sense, blind, made, what tense? Pygmy, cypress, trill, or hill. Knowledge did not wreck experience. Weather warped and nations fell over the edge of the miracle. What thus doth keep love safe, brittle rhymer? Depends on what you mean by safe, little climber. To know without fear the mind of another. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for opening our evening. And so now we will hear from Angela Hume. Angela Hume has a couple of chapbooks out. She is a scholar and a teacher who examines, as she describes it, the transformation of poetry in response to the environmental crises of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. And she does critical writings on this. She also has, in 2013, she won the 2012 Omnidon Chapbook Poetry Prize, and she has her first full-length book of poetry coming out from Omnidon in the spring of 2016, so we will look forward to that. So I'm very happy to introduce Angela Hume.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for having us, and thank you to Brenda for inviting me. I'm so pleased to have the chance to read with Brenda and Melissa and Sara and Jessie, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'm going to read from my manuscript, which, as Catherine mentioned, is forthcoming as a full-length book, and also a little bit from a chapbook called The Middle. I think that my manuscript is about the contours and limits of bodies at a time when our bodies and our attachments and our ecologies are increasingly administered, exploited, and degraded. The book is also thinking about what it means to be in the middle and tries to push back against this rhetoric a little bit, the rhetoric of end times, which I think today is prevalent and can be dangerously totalizing. First, I'll read from a series called Melos, from the Greek, meaning simply musical. There's an epigraph. And then the earth and the world stream's waters vanished into night. It's an anonymous Melic fragment. Melos. If the life of the mind dies with the sun, Who will have seen flapping a sudden chiroptera, myodysopsia, sequoia dendron, its shivered limb, moon a pin, atmospheric obsidian, economy of river, riprap, split intimately like the split down a mammal body, furious with anyone who, in the fabric's camphor, conifer capped in yellow, if the sun were gone, we wouldn't know it. Follow the link to how hot will it get, threshold beyond which. To go the grove, Santa Lucia's granitic basement, batholith to bark and cone, fog, drip, damp, the fibrous bed, give of the breast beneath a head, loam, timber, fear the war, dose estimation, wrecked, plant, sievert. Brain submerged in a bath of heat and minerals, sudden epidemic, sudden epidemiology, imagine living 2,000 years, gland butterfly shaped in a girl whose cells refuse to die, and all the sea wells. At dusk's farthest edge, river, nowhere to go now, light gone out of the sky, rocks and oaks, alders, blanch, fingers reach, the ink, water becomes in night, appearing still, moving, light gone out, but beyond the canopy's blot, sky illumes, blue in the darkening. Forest emaciate in the black, bark, bladder-like, heavier than air, water, elsewhere, spectral poison. Here, body, painful torsion, sac on the surface puncture, rimfire, hemorrhage. Here, my tongue on your teeth, in as much of your body as earth, a bad place, capsizing toward you, unessential world, dissoluble. Evening moves, sky-tinted water, place I'm from, plenty of light left, hums, a cut clean through, carries leaf tinted blue. Morning's dehiscence, Melos, Nuttall's woodpecker, somewhere, batik, plumage or oak, non-being of each is the other of both, coats the mind watching from separate bodies, bright in each, pain or sugar. We were, the limit is the middle between two in which they cease, non-being of each, in search of health, your basic beach, egret, wisp, brush in marsh, takes to flight, where does the bird end, lagoon begin? Geologic fact, west of rift, like all the days wait in sand and wind lifting arid reach. Back of the tongue, a silvering globe, lodged like yesterday's sacs, symptom so bold, binds like the memory of a first unkindness, caved irreversible as the palm's chained line of the head, which you trace with her index finger. Depression took hold. Year of tar sands, 4-degree scare, year of the aquifer. At first, night sweats, night blight, dreamt of a rage's junk effects, vital functions like breathing. And the mind's pigment again diffused like a gum bichromate. There a place for a book on song. The crisis is, the end of the commons is very slow violence, and we do not heal. Vocalization declines in foraging, breeding, and we say not because we did not love. Crustal plate strikes slip at the transform boundary, all matter moving in one direction or entirely the other. Okay, I want to read a little fragment from a series called Second Story of Your Body, whose last line points toward an essay by Brenda Hillman, and the essay is called On Song, Lyric, and Strings. Lacking measure in her incredible need, separation fell the dwelling toward a sojourn that isn't evisceration. No, the network is sick when you cut out of the woman a stuck constitution, a lone Antigone, a lone methodology, Antigone's threnos, aporious, porous. Were it not for the orders of music hidden, we should be claimed by the preponderant void. First, there was humming. There was also a little Robert Duncan in there. Okay, some of the language in these next fragments is from features and interviews by Fox News and Public Radio International. Interestingly, two outlets on relatively opposite ends of the political spectrum. The fragments are a reflection on what is often, I think, a problem of what we might call toxic discourse, the way in which toxic discourse can be mobilized, even inadvertently, to reinforce a politics of sexual and heteronormativity. Giovanni De Ciro is one environmental justice advocate whose thinking has been important to me on these issues. So just a few little fragments. Toxic panic, triclosan, bionormativity, atrazine. Are we feminizing our baby boys? Assault on the male, our future at risk. First, a series of glands like a smear, combining elements of two or more animal forms, yellowish at the periphery, in the bile, fear the girl, the milk. Initially absorbed through tissue in the mouth, hard palate, soft upper and lower teeth, site of threat displays, panting, production of sounds, repulsively, into the blood, into a baby, a creature large, ugly, and frightening, the downward tilt of any glands, incomplete masculinization, providing excellent control over how much chemical gets into the mouse. Something about how sperm is made, of a degree incompatible with life. Pass down to your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren your blue eyes, left-handedness, or favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe, not a lifetime of toxic exposures. Fix it so kids can be normal. Okay, I'll read just a few fragments from a series called The Middle. An aesthetics of the middle, dreams in skin. For years I wasted my body, tight coil round a hook without consequence. The planet dimming like any one. Insisted time spent in such a way we did not have to reckon with it. Force the middle, its non-ache, ultradian cycling, most earthly condition for those who know no earth. 1,700 miles of energy security crosses hundreds of bodies. Open fluid pockets, bitumen, viscous omen, won't flow unless heated, diluted. Found leaking crude, work of the middle, surfactant, metal hollowed, foul, fouling air, water, land, once water followed. When the oil, when the food, when we are well again, will we conceive a child, crystalline structures, set to generous music, difficult as stopping a love from devouring a sharded mind, firm diagnosis, white atmosphere, sick now with snow, awaiting burial. Ask 1 in 3, 1 in 5, would you have done what we did? When the water runs out, the middle runs out. Until then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, our next reader is Sara Larson, and she has chapbooks out which include Novus, The Hallucinated, Merry Hell, and most recently, After Sappho. She also has a full-length book forthcoming, All Revolutions Will Be Fabulous is the title. I love the title. And that will be coming out from Printing Press in the fall of 2014. Sara Larson is a member of the organizing collective of the Bay Area Public School, an autonomous free school in Oakland. And this school keeps coming up in kind of conversation and in relation to people brought to my attention. So I think a lot of us are beginning to be curious, and maybe we'll have a chance to ask about that. But I'm very happy to introduce Sara Larson.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brenda, and all my fellow readers. So happy to be here. So I'm actually going to read from a manuscript that's ongoing. I'm still writing it. It's called Merry Hell. The hell in Merry Hell is Helen of Troy. And you may remember Helen of Troy. And I say that because I recognize a lot of you in this room. We were all there in ancient Greece when she reigned as queen. And we remember very well the scandal that ensued. Some say that she left Menelaus, her husband, to go off with Paris to Troy. Some say that Paris abducted her and took her to Troy. And when I think about those times, I think of it a little bit differently. I really think that Helen left alone, and that what she was leaving behind was empire, the empire of Greece at the time. And intermixed with Helen in this manuscript, I would be remiss if not to mention it, is the Petrolus, the women of Paris. And I know you remember this as well. It's like I'm telling this room who totally knows. 1871, Paris, during the Commune. And the women, of course, got blamed at the end when we all burned down Paris, just like Helen got blamed for the Trojan War. And so this manuscript is really about Helen and about the Petrolus. You don't like my femme, my bones, my milieu of manifesto. You load your aged stories with rape, but you like my rent, especially my back rent. There are so many ways to be good, to not go to hell, to accept Paris, to marry it, to do duty, to adhere patriarchs, to accept story, despite indignity. There are so many ways to static space, to not go to hell. This is not those ways. This is not that story. Hell. I'm Helen. To begin, authority is spirit, semen, cash. As sold as a jury urn, milk root of bank. I stand at the banks to conduct their disappearance into cruel, dark wine thalassa. I pity yous guys as a candidate for death, insisting thieves. My innocence, lacrimal and stooped of meat-ravishing pearls, and yet it revolts. Buried of clay refuse, sows organ moss. My body is a battleground. I have no business here. My nerves swap with Helen, uncobwebbing all expanse, as pigs discuss with heroes the ever-darkening, thickening hemoglobin staved in iron. Paris has abducted Paris, 1871. We refuse judgment. State, hereby, I leave you. Some say, to turn, to run, to flow, last evening's blue moon wine blue, you plan come to fill the kinky grave with kinky corpse, to fill the kinky corpse of warm cash who will die in color in my living body, a communard arrondissement. true to my name. Hell I am to ships. Hell I am to men. Hell I am to polis. Hell I am to juridical slaughter. Hell is the stamp of my body. Hell is the implication of my force. Hell I am to Paris. Fuck him. Hell I am to the executioners of song and life. Hell I am at the barricade. Hell I am at the book block. Hell I am the goddess eater of mortal men. Hell I am the earth eater of mortal men. Hell I am Andre Leo. Hell I am Louise Michel. Hell I am the destruction of Paris. Hell I am Egypt in uprise all eras. Hell I am of coercion. Hell I am femme. Hell I am to marriage. Hell I am of domini. Hell I am upon state. Hellion, true to my name. Will I end in vibration? Merry hell, with all these fucking dudes. Sun-devoured, clocking a shard of horsecock, 'cause I know the reverie happening mutilates each hand, to only crash through costume, lavish, sweetbread, club officers, une union of femme, is my serious task. Is my pelvis inhabit cannon, the only cannon? Did the richer detonate our telescope sternum, collective drag? No cop can enter, periphrasis, periphery, perineum of this poem. And damned if I might judge a course of hell. I hear sirens beyond whatever barricades appear or dis, where arrondissement ends, where arrondissement begins. Rather, keep me away from justice in Oakland or wherever. I'm talking to you. Mayday, pay bills, elevates to a regime. How do I come, not in time, not space, or wherever? Drainpipe of paychecks, desertion of fingerless manacles, the dead brood. I keep them in my stomach, dripping tongues, hang out. Born of an egg. I stowed away, then an eggshell with ribbons. It smells of egg sarcophagus. I'll put your dick in a sarcophagus. Do not fuck with a woman who has seen threatening letters from the underworld and faced death. They're snapping our bras under arrest. Here in Egypt, the Nile retracts, then expands again. Grim banqueter of you, corpse. Where ancient wound spills, slain babes into tyranny. This hood, red and blue, all flashing epileptically, continuously, is a woman's body. Now we're on lockdown. Now they're all watching. Hear those hella cop tours? How did I disembark out of hierarchy? Cesspools, whoops of police state. I am the hell of women down there, harsh, and I won't go. I will not go without my girlfriends. Her of torch blow. Her of crystal. What kind of fuckery is this? Achilles and Paris, all male, along with the rich, must leave by balloon. The only writ I made says, "Hi, I'm still here. Hello, I'm alive. There's not much bread." Then again, there never was. Even I bit the dust. My price is slaughter. Heliopolis. Accounts in arrears. Debt shells. Bone-dead creatures lay out without consciousness. On the beach, conch shells. Endless strikes of lightning. Patrimonies digging out of the eye. To approach fear, you must go upside down. Sail underside, rounded earth, where ocean surges space, where my bureaucratic purchase of a $4 latte drops out. I see the hemoglobin of my dead comrades, soft as watermelon. I see my grandmother on seas, all ropes linked. Aphrodite's seafoam wave washes up the corpse and decay. And who is my beloved? My double came to me in units of men, mohawks of dried, gory blood. From the wall, Aphrodite. Riot cops, en route to Troy. Who shall wear the shroud? Not me. I'm still on fire. Embers, broken bricks, bayonets, cobblestone streets where all my child, wretchedly, hungry. Hunger is consumed by fear. I will never eat again. It's obvious you eat every day. Helen's on fire. Demoted goddesses, us all, as usual. These are the stakes by which we were tied and burned. Petrolus, we make this city a stake. Helen, we make this empire a stake. Resistance arsonist. If I am cruel, I also be hurt. All the nameless ones, let them be named Helen. All the nameless cunts, let them be named Helen. All the nameless witches, let them be named, and wrap elements in this naming. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next we have Melissa Mack, who apparently sits in an office building watching the occupiers at times. So we'll expect something interesting from you. All right, her chapbook, she has a chapbook entitled Includes All Strangers, which was published in 2013. Her work has appeared in Catechism, Poems for the Pussy Riot, and in the collective publications, The Feeling is Mutual, a list of our fucking demands. I'm going to say that again because it feels good, and I faltered, which is not fair. So, the collective publication, The Feeling is Mutual, a list of our fucking demands from small press traffic, and what is called violence. She is a student of the Bay Area Public School and a yoga teacher and an organizer, and has a lot to share with us. So please welcome Melissa Mack.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Brenda, and Sara, and Angie, and Jessie. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I have a new work that I'm a little nervous about. So let me just see what time it is. Okay. There's so much relationship between the work that is here tonight, I think. Press the surface and the skin transmits. Come up behind me. You get fat, I fracture hackily. Break out in thin discs of quartz crystal. If the skin is lapped, leaves viscous little tabs like its apparatus, till it like to burst, crack, or make the spark jump the gap. I say, people, what? What you gonna do? The membrane is full then, the membrane is thin. A when is made. There's a condition. Through the glass from incident light, sapphire could catch. As stick to rock, wet lap electric, crystal, it's only temporary in conditions of unusual necessity. There's time for twinning, a time for coloring, when the trace and then the seeing, a time for co-embodiment, power in the house. I'm not saying I don't miss meetings. It's easier when there's space, open system, pretty cavity, druzied with glittery crystal. Sometimes there's too many, too much, and it just sucks ass and not in the way you want. Okay, this is terrible to have to read this, but I'm going to. It's a long prose section. If distribution and circulation are aspects of production that are properly historical, production and consumption being given by or according to need, which seems weird to me because in many parts of the world, it's way too late to consider production and consumption givens driven by need. Our whole system experiencing need in a way so far removed from that required to survive, it's not recognizable any longer. But okay, I'll go with it for now. It's not the main point of this digression. The circulation model of the moment we might seize is, as Lisa Robertson points out in her untitled essay in Nilling, ecology. And we'd better care to seize it for real, else the bright light of shipwreck gonna be live and similarly moving as its metaphor, moving as decomposing, which, okay, in a really big picture way is how it goes. And I have many days where to live is Christ, to die is gain. And it was morning and it was evening. The 365 times 39 plus 180 or so with day. Just like Robinson Jeffers, who couldn't wait to dissolve into calcium. But to my point, or to Lisa's point that I am attaching to like a tiny microchip of granite aggregate, ecology as a circulatory model of a mutually embodied power in relationship, as long as one considers ecology in terms of complex processes of disequilibrium and emergence instead of a harmonized closure. Ugh, this is terrible, disequilibrious interruption, and I feel miserable about it. Something I've learned to recognize as useful and a necessary part of art, whether or not this paragraph keeps. That rusty squat equant on Georgia's Jack in the Pulpit 2 from 1930 seriously irritates me, and I know that's good. End prose section. The mountain tries to help. She releases her vapor for the crystals to begin. Aromatic smoke slips up through the blowhole in the skull. The long time of the coming into being of the crystal, which includes awareness, awaring. Fragility need not connote privilege, lest it be that to care for the new body. Tongue, tell us, why are we so hot and wet reading about pearl formation? Because, said the tongue, the oyster licks her and on top makes liquor. Somewhere the color of praise, washing agent, inundation. I guess you could think of them as alive because they're forming. They don't speak but have telesi, body, fluoresce authentic, invisible but more energetic, metamorph on contact. A Meraviglia is born in the river of the gem-bearing bed behind the brushwood weir, in the 7-Eleven parking lot out back by the dumpster. Practice this bearing with determination and a courageous heart. Crystal skin is first sharp, then smooth to sugarloaf cabochon, in the finest water with the others, in the illum. Scooped by the barefoot canessima with shriveled skin, alluvial washing agent is inundation. Sieved, buddled, submitted, sold on the street, set on the lead lap of the lapidary, held in the dop, run with a pedal and a slip-roped bow. Slotted props, cradle a wooden spindle. What were we looking for? Polishing pigeon blood to prevent parting. Working with awareness of weakness, we assuage the met plains. As in nacrine, blent in one soft blaze. Craze late on perception of better fire from cutting. A diamond is rough. It cuts to imply water. Okay. Pollett's collar heals the neck. A gem setting, a collection of gem settings and their inorganic flora. A collection or collecting is a good model for identity formation because it is acquisitive, growing the being, but selective, winnowing towards differentiation with other beings. An assembly paired the parure matches, but you can break it up, wear the brooch in your hair, give the other half to your BFF. For strength, for guiding, for attachment to another, the other body. The ornament is exalted. And I have this long quote from Elizabeth Taylor talking about this diamond that she has called the Krupp diamond. When I look at it, the deep Asher cuts, and Asher was the diamond cutter, the deep Asher cuts, which are so complete and so ravishing, are like steps that lead into eternity and beyond. My ring gives me the strangest feeling for beauty, with its sparks of red and white and blue and purple and on and on. Really, it sort of hums with its own beatific life. To me, the Krupp says, I want to share my chemistry, my magic with you. Make me feel some type of way. Step forth and look into the loop. In the loop, the inclusions. Material there when the crystal was forming, and the crystal just flowed around it with its voluptuous immobility, catching it up and calling it history. Rutile, silk, gases, fans, liquids, other crystals. To industry, inclusion is flaw, cuts clarity, grounds for exclusion. No demand if everything is included, everyone has. On the other hand, some gems are too rare to be marketable. But what a proliferation! A limitless universe of forms, fabulous scapes of volcanoes, forests, cosmoses, ghosts. The Gita says, no one should relinquish his duty even though it is flawed. All actions are flawed. All actions are enveloped by flaws, as fire is enveloped by smoke. My tears have been my meat day and night. My tears have been my lead gem night and day. My pendeloque cut emeralds have become my world without end. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. All right, Jessie Sandoval. Thank you. Is our next reader. She works as a literary editor and translator, specifically of Nicaraguan works. I believe she can tell us the particular projects that she's at work on now, but Nicaraguan poetry, yes. And her poetry, her writing seems to be experimental and an exploration with an interest in spirituality, and I think I'm going to let her work speak for itself. It's just really a grand pleasure to introduce Jessie Sandoval.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to Brenda, and thank you to lovely, beautiful sister poets reading here today. I haven't read in public in a long time, so I wanted to let you know about that. This poem that I wrote is not titled, but it is about California and I guess our lives here living in California. And I think it kind of plays back and forth between time. It goes back in time, forward in time, and sometimes it gets away from me. I tried to control it to see the direction of when I was going to go back in time, forward in time, and it just kind of went on its own. So we'll be flowing in and out of different time zones and places. So I'm going to go on right now. Okay. Millions of skinny, dipping toes threaten to break apart the California coastline. Every day, very expensive satellite imagery shows a critical mass of black dots succumbing to negative ions. On the ground, temperature-curious big toes attached to feet peeking out under rolled-up jeans, adjacent to junior assistant Friday khakis, sundresses and brides and grooms posing together for posterity at the beach. A very popular solution for pretending to have a sense of humor in the absence of one is to dip one's bare feet into water that is not pool water. Oh, and yes, not to be forgotten, even more furry paws than was originally estimated by seismologists are canines and their tails wagging and dipping their paws in the sea. This is becoming a thing. But not cats, not enough cats to make a ruckus, a significant ruckus. Needless to say, wading, treading, and drawing tiny circles with your big toe up and down every inch of these shores, Californians are flocking to the coast to say goodbye without intending, and it's taking a toll on the edges of the earth. So now we are tilting. Under our weight, more weight, and under that, heft and shifting dirt. We tilt things. All of us contemplating the awesomeness of seaweed and going over our grocery list and 10-year plans at sunset. Not at the same time, please. We must take turns hanging our feet over the Pacific or we are lost. Weight redistribution and so on. Did you know that they're making houses out of repurposed plastic soda bottles and other reclaimed materials down in Mexico? A girl with dirty blonde dreads riding Bart notifies anyone within earshot. She's a prophetess with perfect straight teeth, a shiny silver ring with a blue bead playing at the edges of pretty girl deconstruction and strip mall nativism hangs, piercing but not puckering the skin around her delicate arched brow. You know, more affordable, sustainable, easier to make, easier to take apart. But some things can come back to life too many times. Bubble Yum Bubblegum is notorious for this. Reanimating pink asphalt goo from 7-Eleven claims thousands of bare feet every summer. Ronald Reagan's 1950s interminable comic book hair also helped him come back, 1981 and 1985 respectively. We all watched him divining prolepsis on TV, equipped with his mother's Bible, bookmarked to the second book of Chronicles, 7:14. Something about turning away weakness, humility, and land healing. Section 8, San Francisco Bay Area subsidized housing for parents with dependent children. Subsidized walls were once thinly veiled permanent impermanence. Now, not so much, and not now, and not so quite rice paper thin either. But if you squinted bravely, you could see through walls and witness fellow Alameda County beast of burden transfigurating matter inside, tilting and resisting deeply burrowed objects, previously only removable by wielding very tiny tweezers and hard drinking. If you don't want to rip people apart, finesse and guts will be required. Applying line and color after meditating and making use of your late grandmother's talents for growing pretty green things in 10 by 10 refugee-size villas will yield more and serve to publicly denounce the overwhelming tyranny of weight-bearing, compressing airspace at levels not yet seen. I've been growing new things for you. An ingenue conjures melodrama with her lover at 2 a.m., their coupled feet hanging over the edges of the Pacific coast. Old movie fog panning over the skeletal remains of an old bathhouse. Punto de Lobos, our country's dearest piece of real estate ass, tilting. One day, it will break off, too. Free for the taking because the edges of everything in the world are splintered, rusty and bent back, and shrieking of waste management potential. Matrix capital for garbage clever little fish. For the poor on hiatus and the newly converted optimistic positivists, it's possible to watch reruns of Good Times and still not get. It's about us being up for grabs at various stages of decomposition. Broken glass strata, potato chip size glass, and shiny pulverized fairy dust. Strewn blood let from a glass-embedded knee makes excellent crabgrass compost. It's hard to play here, but you can play better games. Grow good skin, turn different colors, fall in love, learn to swim at the community pool. You see, I have feathers too, gentle fish. Repurpose lines of poetry, tilt the state, and mend your mother's teeth.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank all of you. And I think we will be finishing with Brenda Hillman again. And a few questions and answers. Discussion would be great. And we're having an abbreviated open mic so that we will, I would like us to have a full evening here.
Great. Well, thank you so much to these brilliant young women. I'm so just blown away by your great work. Yay. As I said, we were brought together by, an ecology, poetry, feminism, activism, particularly Occupy Oakland and Occupy Cal. And I thought I'd read, I'll read 3 poems. One is a new poem, fairly newish, from Amiri Baraka, a rhyme for Amiri Baraka. A hawk skims the exterior of the interior hill, piercing non-syllables you cannot dream. Its sound is extreme, red rickrack on a hill, red's arid shadow on the other side, chattering with dead men in dead books, shattering with red men in red books. No more anger than he's supposed to do, but angry enough, check, 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 not angry enough to not to. And who are we to judge at the edges and where? Who throw money at death, 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 who throw money at death. This poem is... Bob and I participated in Occupy Cal. We've been reading Piketty's book. It's probably a lot of people in this room are reading Piketty's book. And I just think a lot about inequality and the fury that we all feel. And this is from Occupy Cal. It's a prose poem. And one of the great advantages of being an old lady out in an Occupy action was that I felt like a lot of the cops were like younger than my students. So, I mean, there's something about being in relation to police officers when they're like your students' age, and they could have been your students, even if they're beating your students. So that's the deal with being a mom. A brutal encounter recollected in tranquility. There is a space of uncertainty in every act, even standing before police in riot gear. Looking into their eyes, we think it's possible to reach them. We reach out with my feelers. The crowd presses in. The night is exactly the age of our students. What will be called batons, nightsticks, or truncheons, clubs are certain in the angle of the hitting. Looking into the eyes of the officers, they start moving to clear a bit of ground. We know the point is lost. The evening news reports resistance to officers, but not to bad money. Looking into their eyes, trained not to meet other eyes, amber spokes around each pupil, we think they are scared, but not scared enough, and some probably have children in public schools. What should we do with the lost point? Euclid notes that geometry begins from a point that has no part. Peaceful protest as they move forward. A student resists and is beaten. Our feet no longer touch earth but connect with other feet underground. Will defending the tents bring down bad money? I distrust moral certainty and even distrust the sentence, I distrust moral certainty. I admire the anti-heroic line of ants. I admire the unknown. Looking the cops in the eye is not the point, nor is fighting about the state budget the point, nor is the point waking up in jail to pay for a decade that was asleep. The point moves with other points in beauty and justice because we cannot see the whole. A group can be mystical or a mob. The point moves during the hitting that moves where the body stands or lies. 2 feet make 2 points, and that is how the line is drawn. Sometimes I'm sick of humans, except for babies, poets, and the ones I love. As we stand outside loving each other, we cannot forget the ants under us making smart corridors in wet ground, even under the chancellor's house, seeking sweets at all hours, finding friends who are exceptions, whose actions make a line. If ants fail, they begin again. When the officers use their nightsticks, truncheons, batons on your ribs, we are knocked back, but students have it worse, their debt. They take blows in a line on the earth. You cannot be sure you won't fight back until your friends are in danger. The cops have put hitting behind that feeling. Had I been able to stop the officer's nightstick by grabbing it, I would have, but I'm not stupid. A smallish grandmother versus them, and I did not believe grabbing their sticks would work out. Don't hit, I was telling the baby earlier. There are many theories about violence, but when people rise up, it is mostly unplanned. Use your heads, we shout naively at the cops. We won't be a better person until schools are free, but the nightstick cannot poke our soul. Oh no, that nightstick cannot poke our soul. More students are beaten. We cannot help it. We are close enough to see our feelers in their badges and the numbers, a bit of bronze and silver in our compound eyes. We have taken an experiment outdoors. Our writing accommodates uncertainty, but most people prefer certainty, which is why writers become depressed. Later, the place where the police put their truncheons hurts when we make love, and we will make love outside of time. Go home to your families, we naively shout, and try to study the badges in our section. Later, we recall one of the cops was named Young, and another was named Hart. Euclid says non-existent points can make a line we all agree exists. Your writing offers recovery from non-existence, and one cure for depression is action. Writing may be your most necessary action, but can't be the only one. If you find yourself in the dirt with feelers, it is good to get back underground. The ants reach other ants at the edge of the lawn. They pass the message along. And I'll close with a short poem about trance from Practical Water. I do hypnotherapy, and I have like a set of characters that I encounter in my hypnotherapy, and one of them is an anarchist lady in the trance. So thank you for your attention, and we'll answer a few questions. Then I guess we'll eat brownies for 5 minutes or something. Is that how it goes, or we can do open mic? Okay. So thank you a lot, and keep writing. In the trance, and you brilliant women, love you so much. Yeah, let's get the action. Keep going with the action. In the trance, a pretty anarchist said to me, "It's not that a great love happens. What happened became your great love." Her echo had an ancient glow and so proved buoyant for my little craft. I left the world and felt a world. The bee, loading its gloves with powder, the albatross, wanting one thing from the sea. "Nothing can wreck our boat," said she. And when the water felt the glacier, the future held a present tense. The present held a future without cease. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, why don't you all come forward, and please, people, be...
Just like 3 questions.
Yeah, responses, questions.
Maybe 3 questions. So does anybody have any?
And feel free to grab a brownie while we're doing this. It's just
Does anybody have a question? Come on, Jessie. Questions? Comments? Dancing? Okay, John.
Any of you, what's the interface between language and activism?
You guys answer.
Well, my own personal experience, there's so many aspects to it. There's a way that the language itself can kind of make you, it's like a barrier sometimes with the people you're trying to work with, depending on the language that is being used, the terms, and the communities you're trying to reach out to. There's different levels of education and culture. So navigating that for me as a bilingual person, living in the Bay Area and trying to reach out to people of color who are monolingual, only speak Spanish, that's always a challenge for me, and I'm always negotiating and working and learning English again and learning Spanish again. So that's just one part, of, I don't know if that is relevant to what you were asking.
There's not a right answer.
Okay.
And I would say language is, speaking and writing and language itself is part of a creative act. And to me, there's no existence for activism unless there's a continual creation involved. Not just a resistance, a breaking down, a fighting against, but a creating of something new and a visioning of a new world. And I think language is really a big part of that.
I have a question that I'm not sure I know how to succinctly ask, but it came up actually with my quick email with Angela today, and I think I was not quite aware of perhaps the tensions or the efforts to examine the language of ecofeminism. I guess I had not especially associated eco-poetry with feminism so strongly. It has felt natural to me when women poets have been addressing ecological issues, but
I think something that was evident tonight in all of the readings is like this sort of consciousness or anxiety or concern about the way that women historically have been subjected to different forms of violence, and sometimes those forms of violence are entangled with violence against the environment. And so I don't think that women's bodies have a kind of privileged relationship to Mother Nature or anything like that, but I think that women often find themselves like writing from an embodied place that historically has been particularly vulnerable to state violence. And I was hearing that tonight, I think, like almost in everybody's work. Yeah. So I don't know.
What I wanted to go back for a second, John, to your question, which is for me one of the interfaces for all of us is in our poetics and in our way of writing, but also acting, maybe in relation to state violence or environmental destruction or something, is instead of certainty, uncertainty, that there's a way in which I felt as if when at least I first started this recent activism, a decade ago, it felt like, okay, you go out with your idea and like you're gonna, fight for it, right? But instead, it feels much more about being in a place like when you're writing, where you don't know what's going to happen next. And so, I just remember one time with Sara, I think it was at one of the strikes or something, we were just sort of walking along and it was like, we don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. And it's not a morally superior condition at all. It's just that that's the way it is sometimes in your life when you're truly open to, change or change like that in some way. And I think you're open that way when you're writing as well, rather than certain. So I think that maybe that kind of connects with the feminism as well.
I think there's something about possibility, something that you just said, Brenda, made me think of it, that when you're writing, that all these things start happening that you didn't know were going to happen, and it's the same with organize. It's the same with organize. I guess maybe I'm just saying what you said. But it's so visceral. And very messy. And there's a lot of meetings.
And the weird thing, one of the exciting things for me about, particularly this this group of women that were out there a lot, and with some amazing men, and many amazing men too, and a lot of these actions, but that there was a lot of good poetry out there. I'm used to like the 60s, old style where you get out and somebody stands up on the platform and reads a completely horrible poem, and then you go like, oh God, okay, now we're gonna go march, right? And so I think one of the amazing things about at least Occupy from all over America was that it was very committed to a dynamic sense of the arts, and and that was what you were saying too. Like there was real creativity, and we'd get out there and read like Barbara Guest or Barbara Guest. She was like in heaven, wondering what's happening. And everything reading, she was slightly not conservative, but medium. She was medium. She wasn't that plain. So why are they reading my poem at Oscar Grant Plaza? But it was really exciting that there was so much really wonderful writing being read in public. That was just thrilling. So I don't know. Maybe that's maybe one more. Yeah.
I'm interested in knowing what motivates the writing coming from authors. Are you, for instance, the poem on Occupy was describing what was going on after the Occupy movement started, and you kind of picture it from the writing. wonder when you're thinking of writing, what motivates? What's the motivation? Is it something that's already there, or is it something that you're thinking about should happen, and it's not going on at the time? How does that work in your mind?
Well, that's a really huge question. I don't know if we can do it justice, but I don't know, maybe.
I'm thinking like of Nigeria, and as the ultimate in disgusting things that happen to women. And what poetry could do.
Well, it can't do much about that. But I think it can exist alongside it really powerfully. And I think in that way, I mean, that business of, back to John's question, like that, whether it's an intersecting set or a non-intersecting set, I think it's more like this, you know, it goes very intersecting sometimes and not intersecting at all. We know it won't affect changes of law, and it mostly won't affect any kind of change of a system at all, but it really very much affects change in the human heart, I think. And so I don't know, I feel poetry's power is immense, but it won't bring those girls back wherever they are from the forest. That's, you know, something else. Yeah.
I have a question. And my question is actually similar. If language is really powerful to convey thought, and thoughts are really what motivate change. Does poetry in general, is poetry in general used to affect change as you see it coming or as you see it should happen, or more to express something that it already is or has passed or has occurred, you know? Is it more forward, you know, reflective forward, or I'm asking of the experts here, the writers?
I don't know, maybe you guys want to take a crack. It's very connected with her question.
It's very similar.
It's like before or after, how does it connect and how does it, what does it cause?
Where does it feel that is the most powerful, I guess? Maybe it's my question.
A little bit of that. What I was thinking when I heard both of your questions was, for me, when I actually sit down to write, it's about listening. And so I think that there's something really powerful in being able to listen. And I don't feel like in that moment, or at least I try not to listen to my personality, but I try to do this other thing, which is a little harder to explain, and I only can hope that it happens, of listening to something else. And I think that it's very, Ezra Pound says that all ages are contemporaneous in the mind, meaning exist together. And I was thinking that when I was writing what I read here tonight, because my confession is that most of that work, being about Greece and Paris, is actually just about Occupy and my life in Oakland, which was really hard to sort of directly get at. And so I'm able to get to something a little more substantive there. I really needed to go into the past and go into other places and connect into whatever this listening is to even figure out what was going to go on the page. That sort of is around both questions, I guess.
Anybody else?
When I think of like something that's happening or something that has happened, I normally, my first feeling is, you know, either intense rage and just blind rage. There's no room for language, there's no room for any kind of logic or reasoning, and it's just all emotion. And so I think that for me, writing personally has been kind of a way of you know, unpacking that and giving it energy instead of it just being this like tight little ball of pain and anger and frustration, and making it something more alive and something more dynamic where I can kind of move around it and make some kind of reasoning with it and reconcile things with it, explore things, and maybe find some kind of peace with it. Give it a voice, whatever that voice has to be, even if it has to be an angry voice. But giving it words, it kind of keeps me from just not hitting my head against the wall. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be some power in that, because you can share that with other people who are probably also feeling like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, I'm so angry. I don't know. That's one aspect, I think, of the writing for me.
I think I feel so much like that, except that instead of anger, I would be more inclined to just get in bed. And, you know, and I feel like writing helps me be a better person who's able to, you know, do small things, because when I'm writing, when I'm really in it and I'm hearing, I feel like, oh, I feel so glad that I was made. I mean, I just feel like, okay, this is what I can do. But then, you know, there's so many other things to do, and I feel like my perception gets much more sharp about what's possible when I'm writing. I just like what you really making the space for the anger, or letting other people have a space to listen. I feel like is a big part of it too.
I think for me, one way that poetry can become powerful is in the way that it can become resistant to language. Like, I think today, I don't know about you, but I spend so much time just online and constantly sort of internalizing this language that's coming at me from all places, and so much of the language that I find myself using, you know, even with the best of intentions or in a political capacity, is always already so mediated by other interests. And poetry, I think, like, enables me to do the critical work of taking some of that language and recontextualizing it, and maybe having a more critical relationship to it. So I think, like, poetry's relationship to language, it's kind of inherently potential to be critical of language is important. But it's so easy to not be critical of the language that we use all the time, you know? So that's one way that I think poetry can become powerful. But
And it's really easy to carry in your back pocket, unlike painting or that. If you're in an Occupy action, you could always have, like, we had Robert Duncan's poem beginning with a line by Pindar, and I had it, and I took it out, and we were just reading it, walking along. We read it, then we read it again, then we read it again. We were just walking along, reading to that poem, and it didn't get anything done, but it was really great company. So, I mean, you need you know, we need a systemic overhaul. We all know that, but poetry is there while we're at it. Hey, let's have a brownie, and then we'll hear from you all. And thank you for your attention.
Can you stay like an extra 15, 20 minutes? Hi, everyone. Okay, the good news, depending on your perspective, is that we can stay for another 15, 20 minutes, and then there's no bad news. Unless you have to leave, feel free. We're going to just move as quickly along as we can with our open mic, because we're all kind of excited tonight, and we're going to keep going. So Jeff Kingman is our first reader. Feel free to do whatever you need to do during this rapid fire open mic. If you need a brownie or to leave or to whatever. Welcome, Jeff Kingman.
Well, I'm so enjoying this reading series, so thank you very much to Catherine for putting it all together. Birthday Girl. F.A.O. Schwartz for a trembling tricycle and smoke coming out of her mouth. She trembled riding around inside the garage. In the old days, little girls smoked Camels. Her little party dress and green soda and a camel hanging from her lip. She almost choked. There weren't any filters. Everything just came right along. Her mother and father were twins, even their shoes. This is a good idea. But it wasn't. They wouldn't listen. Riding with her knees pointing out, she trembled along, hair shriveling as the days grew. She pointed the clicker at the door and complained, "This doesn't move, like fingers on the window." She got her alone once, the fumbling mother. "Where's your cookies, your dish drainer?" The mother masked her anger with cliches. "I drank water for a week, but I never heard the words." Father broke it, but that only worked for a while. He kept quiet. In the 8th grade, the kids tried to offer her a dirty dot. Nowadays, she looks back on it all, wanders around the house crying, and you try to think of something you can do for her, but it's so hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul Okuri.
Well, we've had the subject of nature and as part of our theme tonight, and this is a little poem about Albany Hill. And to understand that when I say there were explosives there, they used to make dynamite in Albany. And they planted all of those eucalyptus trees up there to screen the city from the noise of the dynamite factories. So the monarchs return on Albany Hill to the shelter of the eucalyptus. There was a time they made explosives there, fiery, like the language of Yeats. The ravens are watching from the hills, in touch with nature, smarter than Joyce, more clever than Wilde, honored the world over. Upon a totem pole, the natives of the Northwest are awaiting the monarch's return.
Thank you so much, Claude Converse. Yes.
No one is who we think they are. I never liked to chow at my pencil, the taste of wood, the chips of yellow paint, the spitting of nothing much, and yet I will swallow rust like a sheep eating in a meadow, the rust of my losses scanted with matches, the rust of my memories slipping away like my foot at the bottom of a pond. When I understood the mechanism of my delusion, the blinking of my eyes stopped, and what fell away gave place to the swallowing of days, looking at the meandering of souls' inhabited bodies, carrying the skin of their shadow like cauterized coats. And the space in my own body grew larger, like a hand cupped under an ocean of sorrow. At the end of the day, what remains of the birds in my head are wings flapping in my chest, tenderly, passionately, like death kissing me over and over again.
Thank you, Audrey Sabal.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to read a poem that, glasses please, that is based, well, it's a tribute to the environmental spirit of a book written by Edward Abbey, a bit of a sexist, but I loved his environmental positions and was very inspired myself by the Monkey Wrench Gang. So those of you who know the book will recognize the main character, Hayduk, in this poem. For those of you who don't know Hayduk, Hayduk's his biggest wish was to blow up Hetch Hetchy Dam. Where's the flow, Hayduk? Zoe pushes her poem while my coffee cools. I word stall with sinusitis and wrongly warm February air here in Caffeina. Cafe doors open, the coffee leaves a cup ring circling words I fear read insipid, the way my mother's poems did. Caffeina, Caffeina, speak to me. Do I need to go back to Iowa City? Barren writers in black. Words are weather, cold, distinct. My parents never made it there, or anywhere, really. Here in California, there is drought, my river kayak in rafters, the foothills golden still, wildcats killed in suburbs, lawns and fairways green. Fixing the bird bath, I can't find words. My backyard a desert now, half-baked poems, shriveled like dead newts, fall through fissured ground. An arroyo, I wait for rain. An acquaintance jokes about building an ark in this drought, which is really fucking weird. But maybe we could save our lives differently than did our parents. Maybe there is some hope. Dizzy in the pharmacy, head and sinuses stuffed tight, I clutch, promising remedies. These will bring flow. I'll blow my nose, and with the wacky weather, Hetch Hetchy Dam will blow. Words and fish volley in tumult. A valley appears. Any thought of Iowa gives, hey, Ed Abbey, no dynamite needed, we're no longer impeded. Bust this drag of drought with my snout, Hayduk lives.
Thank you. Steve Lane.
This is a poem that I've been working on since I was 16, and I finally finished it this afternoon. It's called Please Use Your Fucking Turn Signal. And I was sort of hoping that I would be the first curse word out of the door this evening, but apparently that was not to be. So, honestly, it's not that I don't genuinely appreciate your repeated offers to play Guess Where I'm Going Next at 75 miles per hour in the dark. Just being a contestant is honor enough, even though I can never win in spite of many, many, many spins of the wheel. And it certainly isn't that the baby in the back seat and the unpaid bills and the highway hypnosis and the night blindness and the phone calls and the unwanted hand job and the alcohol and the drugs and the ghosts in the back seat all make it at all difficult to concentrate. It's the tens of person hours and specification meetings and legal requirements and design features and the mining of the metal for the wire and pumping out the crude oil for the plastic and the unmitigated effort that went into making sure your vehicle has one in the first place, all of which is wasted. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Bartu.
Hey, hi, Mum. Yeah, okay. I just want to thank everyone who's read so far tonight and who's going to read. I mean, this is never that easy. I think I know that just as well as everyone else. I had trouble choosing tonight, but I think I'm going to read something called Meathead Meets the Moon, 2:17 a.m. Okay. You remember it well. It was not the first time you had been making love by a brook a la missionary, and a rabid koala had fallen on your back. The above verse has just been thrown in the trash. Our hero is skinny and sad. Romance died before letter 99. Again. Our hero sighs. His Adam's apple bobs, nods, and takes an ad out on Craigslist. Meathead, writer, looking for honest living plus bed, prefers glow-in-the-dark poems on the ceiling. Submit. Then, skinny, self-proclaimed, Meathead steps outside with one step to the right. He's on the street, going for off the street, going into ahead, the trees. For inspiration, Meathead calls out, calls himself that 'cause when he's dead, flowers will eat his head. Calls himself meat, headin' for the slaughter house, but not tonight in the forest mouth. So he's Meathead 'cause he's dumb and he has to call himself to remember where he's been. And he thinks on how it used to be. Man, says our beefhead, it'll be beathead when the flowers are done with him. I used to be so good, I used to be the tune I hummed to, and I could shred too. I shred my fucking rhymes like they were whole wheat, like they were cereal, man. And Meathead shuts up after that and needs to say something, anything, but quietly. Our thin-lipped, starving poet with the plum core plastered on the inside of his patchwork throat is hungry for a word. When it comes, he'll etch it upon a tree. So for now he kneels at the altar of moonlight, that place where he goes. It is a state, a geography, a time zone all its own, hours ahead, and it always shreds. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Nalini Davison. Nalini? No? Okay. Let's see, John Oliver Simon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, sisters. I want to invite you, if I didn't give you a flyer, take one. Thursday night at Book Sync, we're commemorating a fallen comrade. Beautiful young poets I first fell in with in this town almost 50 years ago, Lowell Levant. Al Young and I and Luis Garcia and others are gathering to read in his memory. Nicotinoid. A nicotinoid is poisoning the bees. A kind of tobacco I would die to watch Marguerite or Shulamith exhale to the skies. Plumed from mammary glands of crop dusters, make nervous systems of arthropods feel like pre-teens inhaling initial cigarettes. Gets rid of weevils, borers, roly-polies. Gets those soybeans to market. Slick as you please. Messenger bees return from scouting forays, drowsy and irritable as Don Draper after an office day of scotch and Luckies. The Queen acknowledges the algorithm. Colony Mind writes elegiac poems. The flowers linger all afternoon forlorn.
Thank you, John. Elliot Shane.
Another gift. We drove the hitchhiker down the dirt road to the cabin in the middle of the apple farm. It was Christmas Eve and raining. Everything had that Washington mist, and we took it inside, thinking a philosophy of serendipity would bless our hitchhiker's young family and the pot-belly stove they used for heat. There were a few presents wrapped, and the wife, who was pregnant with another, looked strained when our newfound friend asked if we could spend the night. It was as if Jesus had grown deformed. My partner and I, we slept in the barn where apples had washed in, and the folly of man is the gift we were given as the long night hitched its way to dawn.
Thank you. Steve Wasserman.
Thank you. A silver star shines peaceably in the night. All the death that has ever occurred does not equal that light. Illumined flakes, flashes like a distant roar. My mother and father breathing on the shore, past all imaginable memory, rise, sprightly star, from darkened foam, be born as waves wash footprints away. Never again born and forever alive, my inherited star, my kneeling sea, hope and devotion arrive. A black arc through the green and deathly sea, steer me from black cage to light sky. Thanks.
Thank you. Victor.
Don't tell. This is a short poem. It's called The Fall. Pushed out from out the soaring stratosphere, I breached the sky. And though the sky blue tried to hard herself to cradle me and prop me up, her fumbling, frantic, airy fingers blustering to frenzied flutterings, rifling my hair and clothes, still I slipped down easily, and my blue slide ended brown by earth, who never tried to catch it all, but slovenly he simply sat around, and though he made a languid effort to be soft, his natural solidity then ended me. It's my hard luck he stood his ground when he should have ducked.
Thank you. Peter Thomas.
The trouble with movement. Cindy, who I had every reason to believe was my wife, asked me why the spokesman on television was waving around. Had I noticed, and didn't it disturb me? The truth is, I was wholly absorbed in the design of his sweater. It was a kind of tic-tac-toe pattern without any X's or O's. One thing Cindy and I had in common right at that moment was the television spokesman. In a marriage, common ground is everything, I've been told. I was told this by a man in a pea green suit, a barker outside a strip club. They are always so emphatic. The spokesman on television was speaking about people who were knowledgeable. That sure did grab my attention. Those were exactly the people I'd set out to find many years ago. I was still looking, and I wasn't getting any younger. I didn't really think the spokesman was waving around, although after Cindy brought it up, I had to concede his shoulders were subtly swaying. I said as much. My wife, if that's who she was, said she probably ought to leave me if I was the sort of man who could sit by idly, even contentedly, while a spokesman on television swayed around on the screen like that. And she didn't appreciate me downplaying the degree of motion he was in either, with my cheesy use of a bit of alliteration like subtly swaying. There was nothing subtle about my rudeness, she added. It was quite brazen and not even a little bit sexy. Which, she went on to say, was unfortunate, since brazen can be very sexy in different circumstances. I had to agree with her there. Cindy was first-rate at the making of salient points. If memory serves, that's what had me fall in love with her in the first place. That and her promise to make me watch the news in leather chaps. We could just turn him off, I said. Are you kidding? She screamed, her face turning a scary shade of red. Now he'll be in our thoughts forever. We'll never shake him.
Thank you. Christina Hutchins.
Thank you for a wonderful evening. And actually all of the engaged days of labor that precede it. Yeah. So I've been trying to write about wind a little because it seems to have this character of being acquisitive without consuming. And I think there's not very many. Thank you too. May Day. My window open. I was trying to work, as if I could shut myself against this day, as if the animal breeze could do any other than sift my loose pages to the floor. The last star had fallen, to the tide a first bird had sung, the dawn chorus crescendoed, quieted. Red-winged blackbirds were landing on the empty playing fields of Memorial Park. The year before my friend Mara died, we walked through a small space slipped between April and May. She spoke her blunt grief of her impending life loss, and I was released from my latest love loss into something greater. And where there had been only unspeakable ache, two laughing voices emerged from the pedestrian curve of the Berkeley Tunnel and continued on down Solano Avenue into Albany, where the concrete sidewalks laid by human hands were imprinted exactly a century ago. Even as our eyes were raised to the blossoming cherries, she and I read the generations with our feet. May has deserted April again, as summer with its dark, ripe fruit will have abandoned this fine blooming spring. Here's that breeze again. Its grass-shuffled touch meets each creature so directly. We are freely regarded, highly regarded, by what disregards us as it seeks. Maybe this underlit air smelling of blossoms in the bay is like the departure a greater love requires. As this breeze leaves the ocean that bore it, the same ocean it itself bears, we are being left behind and carried forth by each moment's desertion. A year later, in the minute and immense space between April and May, our Mora died. Her hand softly chilled as it rested in my hand, even as she listened, her eyes open to watch us, watching her let go.
Thank you. Chris Smith.
Thanks, guys. Thanks to all the great readers tonight. This one is called Find Your Light. A photon bounces around inside our mother's sun for thousands of years, trying to escape. When it finally does, light is born. It then takes its 8-minute maiden voyage to fill our view. It races at 700 million miles an hour to splash into our eyes. It loads our senses, our dreams. It is a form of unconditional love from our life source. But then, where does it go? Sure, we can see the light when it awakens us in the morning. But what about the light inside us, the light we cannot see? When you smile, it's in the twinkle in your eye. It's there when you have an idea. It's there when you love. It's there when you cry. It's there when you help your fellow man. It's there when you forgive. It's there when you pray. It's there when you teach. It's there when you learn. You may lose sight of it, but your light is eternal. Can you see someone else's light? Not their occupation, but their light. Not their education, but their light. Not their reputation, but their light. When you find your light, then you will find theirs. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And Ann Barrows.
It's a while since I've read here, and I was just thinking how this room has a capacity to fill up with poetry. It's really nice. This poem is called In Hindsight. A candle lit against the night, against the world's libido, against hunger, accident, treachery, lies, against the smiler with the knife, the kiss after the match is struck. The dark in the small room distributes itself around 3 figures, burnished by the harsh force of the moment. One looks away, 2 cannot take their eyes from each other, the light having selected them. For her, everything now becomes suddenly possible. For him, nothing is also possible. In that moment, just before the painter decides to hide the flame, dipping his brush instead into light itself, to render not flesh, but expectation, not sight, but apparition, not the skin of the lake, but the milk-shaped moon lurking halfway down, not what is, but what is loved, not what we chose, but what we would have chosen had we but known. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank all of you. Thank you very, very much. And next month, what I can tell you so far is that we will have Rebecca Faust, who was just recently given Poet in Residence at Frost Place. Is it Frost Place, Frost House? Yeah, okay, thank you. And also a group of readers, so I will be sending out notices about that. And it will be a sort of a celebration of Frost plus additional poetry. So, thank you so much. What a fabulous group you are. Thank you, Brenda.